Welcome all of you to a new course on non-destructive testing. Actually, this is a course of 5th semester BTech degree, Kerala Technological University students, and the course code is MA367. So here we will be dealing about the introduction to this course. So the course mainly has a credit of 3, and the main objectives of this course is actually that to introduce the basic principles, techniques, equipments, applications and limitations of NDT methods such as visual inspection, penetration testing, magnetic particle testing, ultrasonic testing, radiography, eddy current, to enable selection of appropriate NDT methods. Next one is to identify advantages and limitations of non-destructive testing methods. Next one is to make aware the development and future trends in NDT. So the main expected outcome of this course is actually that the students will be able to differentiate various defect types and select appropriate NDT methods for the specimen. So next one is actually the introduction to the non-destructive testing. So before actually start going into the introduction to non-destructive testing, we should actually know what is meant by destructive testing, or which is actually the conventionally used method of testing of materials. So here we actually come across several materials in our day-to-day life. Several materials, not only materials, several parts, several products, etc. These materials may have defects, may not have defects, or we actually don't know. So these defects actually, in order to test this particular material for defects, we are actually, the conventional method which is actually used is actually that we are actually destroying this particular material. So when the material is actually destroyed, and then we are actually testing. So when the material is actually destroyed, the usefulness of the material is actually being destroyed. So these materials which are actually being tested may have defects, may not have defects. So if the material is having defects, then it is okay, but if it is not having defects, then it will become a great loss to the manufacturer or the producer who is manufacturing this particular product. So in order to avoid such a condition, we actually come across a new technology which is actually known as non-destructive testing. Actually, it is not a new technology, it has already come into existence, but it is not a conventionally used method. So in non-destructive testing, what we are actually doing is actually that, as the name suggests, there is actually no destruction to the material. So since there is actually no destruction to the material, if it is found that it is not having defect, it can be actually reused, or it can be actually initially used. So it actually help in decreasing the defects which are actually decreasing the losses which are actually occurring to a manufacturer or a producer or a plant or something like that. There are several cases that a particular material which is actually used for some time, for a particular time. So if it is, once it is actually found defect free and it is actually being used, and after a particular service time, or after particular service time or usage time, there are actually certain instances that we have to recheck the material for defect. So in that particular case, this non-destructive testing actually helps in to save more time and save more money, because in such cases, if we are actually stopping the particular operation and we are actually taking the material again destroying it, means it is actually having a great loss. It will to occur a great loss to the producer or manufacturer or an industry which is actually using. So there we are having a great importance of non-destructive testing. And in non-destructive testing, as it is actually being shown in this particular slide, it is a process of determining the characteristics of materials, components or systems. So it is basically a testing procedure. So here we can actually detect and locate discontinuities, or not only detect, but also we can actually find the location of the discontinuities, because there is actually certain cases that the defect will not only be present on the surface, but also it will be present inside the surface, or it is known as a subsurface parts. So it cannot be easily detected by our human eye. So in that cases, we can actually use non-destructive testing, so that material is actually not broken into pieces, and locate discontinuities as well as harmful defects without reducing the usefulness of such material and components or systems. So NDT is means of testing of material without causing any damage or destruction to the material. Okay, so again the NDT after the testing procedures, we can use the material again and again further again, so that it actually help in reducing the losses as well as time of the producer. And also it is having, NDT is having one another name, that is non-destructive evaluation, or that is, it is short formed as NDE, or non-destructive inspection, which is actually short formed as NDI. It also helps in the quality control of not only finished products, but as I have already told, it is not only we are actually testing this method, we are using this method to identify the quality of finished products, but also semi-finished as well as initial raw materials. Also it can be actually used for testing of materials that use. So the main uses or main applications of NDT nowadays is actually in automobiles. There are actually some applications are actually given. Some of the specific applications are given. First one is actually in automobiles. In automobiles, we are actually using this one to detect flaws, defects in brakes, steerings, to detect flaws, that is defects in brakes, steerings, and critical engineering components. Again, in aerospace industries, it is actually being used to detect the corrosion, fatigue, operation and maintenance defects, fabrication effects, etc. Because in our aerospace, it is not like automobiles. In aerospace industries, it is actually very much important because we are actually dealing with the life of several people which are actually, and also not, they are actually not in ground. So the materials, we cannot actually take a risk for manufacturing of such type of components. So and also the products which are actually manufactured in aerospace industries are actually very expensive. So in that cases, NDT actually plays a great role. Again, next one is actually the pipelines. In pipelines means NDT, especially in oil and gas industry pipelines, we can actually use this NDT to find out any defects or leakages in the pipelines, because these pipelines may actually carry oils and gases which are heavily poisonous or highly inflammable in nature. So in that cases, if we are actually using a in destructive testing, means it will incur much losses to the manufacturer. So in that cases, we can actually use non-destructive testing, and also we can actually save the lives of people if we actually detect any leakages. Again, next we can actually use this entity in pressure vessels. So the mainly used non-destructive testings are radiographic testing and ultrasonic testing, as it is actually mentioned. Here in pressure vessels, the main thing is actually that the pressure vessels will be actually subjected to different conditions or varying conditions of pressure. So in that cases, the problem is actually that when it is actually subjected to varying conditions of pressure, if it is actually the energy, if it is not able to withstand that varying conditions of pressure, so if it will actually, leakages will be actually produced and there will be actually loss of large amount of energy. So in that cases, we can actually use non-destructive testing and to find out the defects. Also in power plants, we can actually use it in order to for inspection of boilers, condenser tubes, turbine components and so on. Also, this method can be actually used for quality control of raw materials, as I have mentioned, then semi-finished and finished products. So the testing procedure is actually starting from the raw material stage itself. So from the raw material stage to the finally finished product stage, we can actually use non-destructive testings for testing purpose. Again, we can actually use to determine the remaining life of a component used, because there are actually, once a product is manufactured, at that time after manufacturing of a particular product, there will be actually a we will be actually set a specific time for time or usage time for this particular, for a particular product. So when we are actually, once we actually, so this usage time may not be in number of hours, it may not be in terms of number of hours or number of years or number of months. It can be actually based on the wear and tear, the percentage of wear and tear. So once the material is actually started to operate, and for after a particular time, if we are actually if we can actually measure the percentage of wear and tear from the non-destructive testing methods, we can actually identify what is the remaining life of this particular component. So NDT method actually also plays an important role in this particular case. Also, dimensional measurements and material sortings can also be used, can also be conducted by using NDT method. So these are actually the basic methods or basic applications of non-destructive testing, or basic uses where non-destructive testing methods are actually basically used. So the main objective, as I have already explained this one, but again the main objectives of non-destructive testing is actually that to help in better product design, to control manufacturing processes, to detect location and characterization, to lower the manufacturing cost, because when we actually produce a material, if we actually destroy it, there will be actually, again we have to produce, then manufacturing cost increases to maintain a uniform quality level. So this so in all these are the major objectives of non-destructive testing. And also again, non-destructive testing methods, there are actually different types of non-destructive testing methods available. So first one is actually visual inspection, second one is actually liquid penetrant testing, third one is magnetic particle testing, next is eddy current testing, ultrasonic testing and radiographic testing. All these testing methods will be actually explained in detail in every module, because each of these testing methods will be actually each of these testing methods will be a particular module for this particular course. So as you know, this visual inspection, as the name suggests, here it is actually by our using our naked eye or by using any optical aids, we can actually conduct an inspection to detect only surface defects. So for surface defects, visual inspection is actually very good. Next one is liquid penetrant testing. And liquid penetrant testing, we will be actually use a particular liquid penetrant. Here also we can actually only detect a surface defect. Next one comes that is actually the magnetic particle testing. Here magnetic particle, that is actually the electricity is actually used. Here electricity will actually help in producing an electric field that in turn produces a magnetic field, and that magnetic field or magnetic property of the material will be actually used in order to detect defects. Again, eddy current testing, we actually known as eddy currents are actually waste currents, or it is actually these waste currents are produced as a result of my electromagnetic induction. So induction, so that is that is self inductance as well as mutual inductance are actually present. By using that eddy current, by the method or by the source of eddy current, we can actually do testing method, and that is also one technique which is actually used in NDT. Again, ultrasonic testing. In ultrasonic testing means here ultrasonics are actually the sound waves which is actually having a frequency greater than 20 kilohertz. So these sound waves will not be actually audible to a human ear, but it is actually there are actually that by using that particular source, but there are certain animals which can hear that one, and by using the source of these ultrasonics, we can actually, that is sound energy, we can actually identify the defects. Again, radiographic testing, and that is actually by use of x-rays we can actually identify the defects in a particular material. So these are actually the basic testing procedures or testing methods which are actually come under this NDT methods. So the syllabus of this course I have mentioned earlier. As I have mentioned, each of these testing methods will be actually covered in each modules. So the first module actually deals with the basic introduction of this particular course, and again it will be followed by the visual inspection methods, where we will be actually dealing with our human eye, which is actually the most important tool which is actually used for visual inspection. Again, but there is a particular range up to which a human eye can actually visualize the things that we can actually see a particular defect. So in that cases, we will be actually use certain aids, optical aids will be actually used, like boroscopes, fibroscopes, and also the modern, that is computer enhanced visual inspection systems will be actually used for inspection of defects. So these can only be used for surface defects. Then it will be followed by the second module, which is actually liquid penetrant inspection, where a particular liquid penetrant will be actually used in order to detect the defects, which is actually the surface defects in a particular material. Again, magnetic particle, it will be followed by a magnetic particle inspection, wherein we will be actually using the source of magnetism or electricity as well as magnetism and magnetic particles in order to identify the defects. But here a limitation is actually present, that is here an advantage is present, that is actually basically is that it can be actually used for detecting of both subsurface and surface defects. But one disadvantage is actually that here it is magnetic particles are actually used. So magnetic particles or a magnetic property will only will be exhibited by a ferrous material, that is a material which is actually having iron content. So magnetic particle inspection can be only used in case of materials which are actually having iron content, that is ferrous materials. So there will be actually, we are actually not only dealing with the materials which are actually ferrous in nature, there are actually several non-ferrous materials. So in that cases, we will actually move on to the next one, that is ultrasonic testing. As I have already explained, ultrasonic testing methods will be actually used, where we will be actually dealing with the principles of ultrasonics as well as different methods, the procedure of ultrasonic testing will be actually easily dealt in this, and also the equipments which are actually used will be actually broadly dealt in this particular ultrasonic testing module. Next, it is actually followed by radiographic testing. In radiographic testing, X-rays or gamma rays will be actually used for testing purpose, and this is the main source. But this method is actually having a disadvantage, because X-rays, when an operator is actually largely or it is exposed to this particular rays, it is actually harmful in nature. So X-rays, but it is also one of the technique which is actually being used. So radiographic testing will be actually dealt in the module 5. Then at last we will be actually dealing with the eddy current testing method, wherein eddy current, which is actually known as the waste currents, that will be actually used in order to identify the defects. It is our main applications for conductivity measurement, again hardness measurement, defect detection, coating thickness measurement, advantages, etc. Again, at last we will be dealing about the advantages and limitations of eddy current testing. So these are actually the basic testing methods or testing procedures which are actually being dealt, and that each module will have each defect. Each testing method will be actually presented. So that is actually the basic syllabus, that is an entire syllabus, detailed syllabus is actually being presented before you. Again, the books as per your university syllabus, the books which is actually used is, first one is prescribed is the Baldev Raj textbook by Baldev Raj, that is actually the practical non-destructive testing by Narosa Publishing House, that is 1997. So it is one of the textbook. And again, you have two reference book, that is Hull B and V John, and the book's name is Non-Destructive Testing by, and it is published by Macmillan in the year 1988. That is first copy is in 1988. Again, for ultrasonic testing, if you have a particular interest towards ultrasonic testing, then you can actually you can actually refer to this particular book, that is Ultrasonic Testing of Materials by Springer, and it is actually published by Herbert and Joseph, and in the year 1990. So that book is also good. So these are actually the basic introduction to this particular course.